Welcome back to Editha. George has gone off to war, and you're on page 6. Before it seemed as if she could have written, there came news of the first skirmish, so the first battle in the war. And in the list of the killed, which was telegraphed as a trifling loss on our side, was Grierson's name. So war's real result is what? Death. So what happened to poor George? He was killed in the first battle of the war, and there weren't that many casualties, right? You see that it was listed as a trifling loss on our side. So America won the battle, that George was killed in the battle. Oh, I know. So then what happens? Grief, black clouds. So Editha falls in, of course, what happened to everybody, into just the depth of despair, all what she's going through. And then she goes to visit George's mother. And George's mother had received the letter that Editha wrote, right? Of course, she had given that to George. So George's mother realizes that it's because of Editha that her son is dead, right? So we start to see a change happen inside of Editha. And Editha before had kind of undergone a change of heart with George. She earnestly felt sorry for George's death. But then what George's mother does is she basically says, it's because of you that George is dead, and I'm glad that George died instead of killing other people. And then this is George's mother. Of course, Editha is dressed in black. She's dressed in mourning. And she says, take it off, but before I tear it from your back. So George's mother realizes that this is false grief, is that Editha, right, had think she'd undergone a change that she really hadn't. If we think about before, remember that Editha realized that she wanted to see herself as something to be won. If George lost an arm, they could walk around and George would look like a war hero, right? And that Editha's bow is a war hero. Yeah, so really, I know, just a really sad depiction here. Okay, so now there should have been like a dotted line here or an extra space, because there's a passage of time here. So what Editha had done is that Editha had gone off for the summer when she was sitting to have her portrait done, and she's going through and recounting her life to the person who's doing her portrait. And so the painter says, to think of your having such a tragedy in your life. I suppose there are people who feel that way about war. Now, what that way is, that reflects what George's mother said. And of course, remember that George's father was a minister, and that's why George was going to be a minister, right? Very timid. He was a pacifist, right? So that way that war is bad, that war is horrible. But when you consider the good this war has done, how much it has done for the country, I can't understand such people for my part. And when you had come all the way out there to console her, got up out of a sick bed. Well, and then Editha says, well, I think that she wasn't quite right, and so did my daddy. And then the painter says, well, how dreadful of her, how vulgar. And then when Editha hears this word, right, what does it say right here? This is something really cool. A light broke upon Editha. Bing! And the darkness which she had felt had been without a gleam of brightness for weeks and months. The mystery that had bewildered her was solved by the word, vulgar. And from that moment, she rose from groveling and shame and self-pity and began to live again in the world. So what does this mean? Is that Editha, when the painter says that that was vulgar of George's mother to say that to her, is that now she feels justified, right, in her feelings about war. So Editha was swaying back and forth for having a change of heart, but ultimately she failed and she flipped back to how she was at the beginning of the story. And how was that? She began to live again in what? The ideal. So what do we see here? Is that Editha rejected that growth that she had experienced in that short time when she felt sorry for what she had done for sending George off to battle, and the guilt that George's mother forced upon her. All of that was rejected, and she experiences no growth at all. I know. Really sad when that happens. But there we have it. Editha by William Dean Howells. And until we get to be together again, be well, do good work, and keep in touch.